Frizzle Force. I've read 20 books, and here is how we're going to organize those today. I'm going to put them into groups of 3 and play a game where I have to decide which one I will reread, which one I will rewrite, and which one I would burn. I got this idea from the lovely booktube channel Jan Agathon. Totally check her out. Her wrap-ups are super entertaining. For round number 1, we've got Cruel Prince, Ordinary Monsters, and Murderbot Diaries. And the Cruel Prince, in 2 words, is punky drama. If you're going into the Cruel Prince, you gotta be prepared for just how over the top some of the drama is. You've got everything from battles to the death to bully romance, and I would burn Cruel Prince. Do I want to reread it? Not really. Is there anything in it that I think needs to be rewritten? No. It sets out to be a young adult story about a dark fairyland, and it completely achieves that. What I loved about Cruel Prince was how fast-paced it was. There was always something exciting happening. Nary a dull moment in this book. And there was also lots of different flavors and types of exciting. There's the politics of fairyland kind of plots, but there's also the relationships plots. Our main character, Jude, has interesting and complicated and angsty relationships with her family members, her sisters, her stepfather, her love interests, other people in fairyland. Every single one of these relationships is like a little puzzle to navigate. And I've got a reading vlog of Cruel Prince, and I'll link that in the footnotes of this video. I rated Cruel Prince 4 stars. And then we have Ordinary Monsters. And in 3 words, this book is misty gothic adventure. You don't like the vibe of late 1800s London, where it's all foggy and misty and there might be ghost haunting somewhere? Or like circus freak shows where there might be real magic lurking? This book is those vibes. And I would rewrite Ordinary Monsters because I think I can point to a specific part of it that could be really improved, which is the character arcs. The premise of the book is that sometimes these little kids spawn powers that are often pretty creepy, and the 𝐂𝐀𝐏𝐿 Institute collects these children to give them a safe haven. And all the characters are great. A lot of them get really dramatic, angsty backstories, good motivations inside the story, etc. But very few of them actually have any character arc. Which does mean by the end, I was getting less compelled by these characters. I think the closest we get to a real character arc for any of them is that one of the employees of the 𝐂𝐀𝐏𝐿 Institute comes to care for the children more. But given that in the opening of the book, she was already pretty much on that track and we didn't get to see much actual change in her character, I'm not even sure how much that counts. We also have a teenage boy who does change as he settles into the 𝐂𝐀𝐏𝐿 Institute, but that more seems like we've taken him out of a really bad situation and brought him to a slightly better situation, and just seeing him be a little bit less guarded and constantly stressed out as a consequence. But that's not exactly him choosing to change to overcome a character flaw, you know? So if I was rewriting Ordinary Monsters, I would put in a lot more character arcs. Like the woman Alice Quick that comes to care for the children more and more throughout the course of the story. Maybe at the beginning of the story, I would make her petty. I would make her really creeped out by these children and their powers. And especially because, and this even ties into her angsty backstory, where people with powers have given her and her family a lot of grief. And then we could give her a character arc there. And etc. for all the characters with a point of view. But Ordinary Monsters is so gothic in vibes, in setting, in all of it. It didn't super click with me, and part of that is because I hated the audiobook, but it could really click with you. Talking about Ordinary Monsters, I realized that I included this in my last wrap-up. Oops! But can't take it out now, we need a number of books that's divisible by 3. I rated Ordinary Monsters 3 stars. And then the Murderbot Diaries books. Books 1, 2, 3, and 4. In 2 words, these books contain awkward denial, which is definitely a compliment. Because these sci-fi books are about an android who is so socially awkward and constantly in denial about its own feelings. And honestly, it's so delightful to me. It's that rich irony of having a narrator tell you that it doesn't care about something, but you know that this robot cares about it. You can read between the lines, and yes, I love that subtext in a series. And these books, they've got to be the rereads for me, because they are. I'm on a road trip vacation with my family, and I've been reading these books out loud to them. So I read them first just to myself to prep, and then again out loud to the entire family. And for some of these books, it's like the 5th, 6th time I've read them, so they definitely have all the reread potential, and I would reread them again. What more can I say about Murderbot? It's definitely an intellectual, witty character study kind of books, where it's all about the main character of Murderbot coming of age in a way, where it's discovering what it wants out of life through trial and error, where it's discovering how to make friends and how to be comfortable with people simple. They're fast and easily digestible books with a lot under the surface if you want to start digging and analyzing like I tend to do. It's honestly a little ridiculous when I'm reading these books out loud how often I stop and I'm like, this is my favorite part of the book because this happens and then that means this and then this means this and this is a simple. I rated these books 5 stars. And if you want to watch my reviews for the Murderbot Diaries books, I will link them in the footnotes. Round 2! Winterkeep, Crippled God, and Intergalactic Exterminators Inc. And Winterkeep. In 3 words, this book is psychological adventurous pining. This is book 4 of the Graceling series, and this book feels pretty new adult. A lot of the characters are in their 20s, and the content rating is probably more up there. And this book is narrated by a mix of characters from previous books and brand new ones. And I love all of our narrators, which include a ginormous tentacled sea monster, a sentient fox, a teenage girl who is a politics student, and both of her parents are sometimes literally cutthroat politicians. Bitterblue, a character from previous books who is a strong, independent queen with a lot of emotional baggage, and 𝐿𝐻𝐻𝐿, one of the queen's advisors, who is inside a very much romantic kind of guy, but on the outside is mostly used as an enforcer. And Winterkeep will be my reread. When I first started this book and I saw that we had all these narrators, I was really apprehensive about it because the other books in the series are very one narrator kind of books, and I really like how focused those books are. And then when we got all these different narrators, I was super worried that we wouldn't be able to juggle all these plot lines. But this book proved my worries wrong. Dead wrong. Everything tied together so well. Like, you know my complaint about ordinary monsters where not every point of view character had a character arc and it kind of felt lackluster by the end? This is the book where every single character has a character arc. Yes, even the tentacled sea monster. And I adored watching all these characters grow. I also absolutely adored the love plot between Bitterblue and 𝐿𝐻𝐻𝐿. Their slow, angsty pining after each other was just fantastic, and I kept waiting for that bubble to burst. And that anticipation and the final release of that anticipation, this is why I love romance subplots in books, because it gives me something so happy to root for. I rated Winterkeep 5 stars. Crippled God, in 1 word, confusing. Yes, I skipped all the Malazan books right to the last one. It's part of my ongoing experiment of reading series out of order. And if you want to watch my video on this Malazan book or reading series out of order experiment, I'll link those in the footnotes. I would burn Crippled God. Now, like, the Malazan books are confusing. They're kind of famous for having a learning curve that's like pretty much not even a curve. It's just like a straight line up. You need professional climbing equipment to tackle the learning curve of this book. So of course, going in, I knew it was going to be confusing. But I didn't realize that the writing style itself was also confusing. I thought it was just going to be the world building elements. But it feels like the writing style is purposely trying to make everything more confusing. Like when we switch POVs, oftentimes it doesn't even tell us who the new character is. Or when people are talking to each other, there are so few dialogue tags. Like I don't even know who is saying what half the time. And yes, maybe if I had read all the previous Malazan books, then I'd actually know what was going on and be able to infer most of these things. But in the end, I feel like the book made me more angry than anything else. Because the confusing elements of this didn't feel like a fun puzzle to solve. It felt like someone had pranked me by giving me a puzzle with half the pieces missing and not telling me. So I made it 2 chapters into this book and gave up. And maybe I'll start the series with book 1 and see if the writing style still bothers me or not. But I don't expect I'll ever enjoy this writing style enough to commit to the whole series. Especially because people say that you can't really enjoy Malazan until you've reread it. So yeah, that's too many books. There are just better books to read, and I don't have time to read ones that I'm not liking already. I rated Crippled God 2 stars. And Intergalactic Exterminators Inc. In 2 words, this book is training montage. Is the entire book a training montage? No. Did it feel that way when I was in the middle of the book? Kinda, yeah. This book follows Russ and Nina, who accidentally get entangled in the business of a group of intergalactic exterminators traveling the galaxy to pick up and sometimes dispose of alien invasive species. And honestly, the beginning of this book was so strong. I was rooting for the characters, the plot was interesting and exciting, but then I didn't actually end up finishing this book because after a while, it's like we had lost track of that momentum. The book kind of turned into little episodic adventures happening here and there. And the more I got to know the characters, instead of feeling like exciting, quirky characters, they just kind of felt annoying and brash and oftentimes very unreasonable. So I would rewrite this book. I would add some more try-fail cycles, which is where the characters have more of a structure to their quests and arcs, where they've got the big goal, because I think the big goal in this book is kind of lacking some definition, and then we've got smaller goals where sometimes they try and then they fail, and then they try again and then they fail, and through that they also tie in with their emotional character development, which I also feel like was sidelined for most of Act 2 of this book. I rated Intergalactic Exterminators 2 stars. Round 3, Councilor, Dingo Sister, and Ruby Fever. And Councilor. In one word, this book is mundane. The blurb of this book pitches it as a thrilling gas lamp fantasy, and I think the only real accurate claim in there is gas lamp. Yes, there is a little bit of magic. How much is this magic actually used or affecting the plot? And is this book thrilling? No. This book is very much about politics in the way that politics is about having meetings. Our main character has recently become kind of a senator, and he's just kind of like going to meetings and then going to more meetings and then having food. Well, he also talks about political things, and then something happens and the rebels attack and people die, and then we have more meetings about it. You get the picture. And this book isn't my cup of tea, but I do see the appeal of it. Like, you can get totally used to the routine of these characters, where it is delightful to see them wake up every morning and know exactly what they're going to eat for breakfast, and then they go to breakfast and discuss the paper, and it's like, it becomes my routine as well. It's like the same kind of enjoyable experience of listening to a song you know really well, or rewatching a show you know really well, where because there isn't really any surprises, there's a very homey feel to it. I rated this book 2 stars, and I would burn it. Yeah, just burn it. I don't think there's really a way to make this book exciting without completely overhauling the plot and making it into an entirely different book. Then, Dingo Sister. In one word, this book is sandy. Like, it takes place in a post-apocalyptic Australian outback, and I could just feel the desert heat and the sand getting into everywhere, and the atmosphere was on point. I think I would rewrite Dingo Sister, which is a hard decision, but hear me out. This book is just a short novella. We follow a girl and her best friend, a dingo, as they try to survive, usually by stealing from other caravans. And I think if I was rewriting this book, first, we would make it longer. This book is fantastic. I would just like more of it. And what more would I like from it? Relationship development between our main character girl and the other humans that she's hanging out with throughout this book. Because in the book, the other humans, they're just kind of there. But they don't matter as much as I'd like them to. I want to see some bonding scenes between her and these characters, or maybe some anti-bonding enemy scenes between her and these characters. I just want more of those juicy relationships. I got so much in this book of how much Dingo and Sister mean to each other. But I would also like more exploration of how much girl and other humans mean to each other. I rated this book 4 stars. Then, Ruby Fever. In 2 words, this book is stellar triumph. How fun is it to read this book? A bajillion fun. This is definitely the reread choice. This is book 6 in the Hidden Legacy series. It is an urban fantasy series, and this book follows Catalina Baylor, a super powerful magic user who is kind of getting targeted by all these assassins, as she also has to juggle her duties as a secret agent, and her relationship with her love interest Alessandra, who has an even more complex relationship with the assassins that are after them. This book is wrapping up a lot of the plot lines in this series, and it does it so well. And I will refer you to my video about these books in the footnotes if you want to hear more. I rated this book 5 stars. Round 4. I Hunt Killers, Partials, and Maltese Falcon. So, I Hunt Killers, Game, and Blood of My Blood, 3 books in a trilogy. In 4 words, these books are psychological coming of age. This is 100% my choice for reread. This has been such a good time for reading. You know how many 5 stars I found recently? So many. I'm just pumped. But the find I'm most pumped about is this series. If I had a nickel for every time I loved a series that was teenage boy with serial killer tendencies becomes a sleuth as an actual serial killer comes to his small town, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. And of these 2 series, this one is my favorite. The I Hunt Killer books follows Jazz. Jazz has had an interesting life. His father is like a super extreme serial killer, and his father had like 20 years of killing without getting caught. And for many of those years, he was mentoring Jazz, teaching him all the tricks of the trade, how to kill people, how to get away with it. When Jazz is 13, his dad gets caught and goes to prison, and Jazz is finally free from that life, but not free from all the emotional trauma and brainwashing that came with it. So in these books, Jazz is 17. He's trying his best not to be a creepy killer. He really doesn't want to end up that way. But both nature and nurture are fighting against him. And one of the ways that he wants to prove to himself and to the world that he is not a serial killer is by maybe helping catch other serial killers. I think the best parts of these books is Jazz wrestling against his better and worse natures. Jazz is desperately trying to be a good person, but sometimes he doesn't know exactly what that means, especially because oftentimes he's kind of becoming a vigilante, which is sometimes a no-no. But I also love all of Jazz's sidekicks in these books. He's got great adult mentor figures, but also other teenage friends that help him both in the sleuthing and the trying to be a good person. And they also get their own awesome character arcs. I rated every book in this series 5 stars. Then, partials. And I would burn partials. Partly that's because it was so disappointing, because this is by the same author, Dan Wells, who wrote the other teenage boy sleuth serial killer book, and I really loved that series, so it was kind of disappointing to get into this book and not love it as much. Not that this book doesn't have some redeeming qualities. This is an apocalyptic story, where about a decade ago, terrible virus/robot war ravaged the world, killed like 99% of the population. Then after that, the virus stuck around, and no babies can be born now. So now, a decade later, society has changed quite a lot. I read about the first 20% of this book before I gave up. Why did I give up? There were no good character arcs happening. It didn't feel like this book was really going anywhere yet. I'm sure at some point we would get a more dramatic, inciting incident and things would happen, but I don't want to wait around for that to happen when I'm not enjoying the book so far. I rated partials 2 stars. And the Maltese Falcon. In 2 words, this book is detective noir. I wanted to get a sense of what the genre of detective noir fiction from the 1930s was really like. This is part of my discussion for the sexism of the Dresden Files series, which I'll link that video in the footnotes. And hard-boiled detective was exactly what I got. I was surprised that this book took place in San Francisco, though. I was kind of expecting New York. I would rewrite Maltese Falcon. What would I change about it? Relationships. Our main character, the detective, is kind of a womanizing loner, and honestly, it got kind of boring after a while. And eventually you just have to realize that his deepest relationship is his overly flirty banter with his assistant. What is motivating this guy to solve mysteries, to do what he does? Money? Pure grittiness and hard-boiled detectiveness? If I was rewriting this book, I would give him either a best friend or a girlfriend/wife, and then have them involved in this plot somehow, so that he could both have a sidekick to banter with, and occasionally we could raise the stakes by making them in mortal peril and him have to save them or whatever. But honestly, I went into this book as an academic exercise to better understand the genre, and I ended up actually liking it. I gave this book 3 stars. And those are the last 20 books I read! If you made it to the end of the video, leave a burning emoji in the comments for all of those books that I had to burn. Some of them gleefully, some of them reluctantly. And what do you think of these books? Subscribe for more videos on Frizzle Fridays, and thank you for watching.